Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Hello and a good morning to you. It's Wednesday. I'll be danged if I know what Wednesday. Oh, yeah, May 20-something or other. What is it? May 25th. And Penguins won, so we just got one more game to sweat through, and we're playing for the Stanley Cup again. That'll be so cool if we can do it. All right, so I often throughout my tenure have told myself, this is not a sports talk show. This is not a sports talk show. But, gee, I'll tell you what the easiest job in the universe would be, being a sports talk show host. It's not like you have to, what would the job be? The job would be to keep up on all these games that you love. So instead of like me having to read newspapers and magazines and the internet all day, all you would do is watch games. Watch games. And admittedly sometimes have to, suffer through boring interviews with athletes that invariably say nothing. But still, that's what you have to do. And it's not like you ever have a dearth of stuff to talk about. And it's not like you have to go really angling for callers because everybody wants to vent. And my God, I cannot think of an easier piece of work than to be a really good one. Any idiot can do it, clearly. But to be a really good one means you really got to know the stuff and then have a capacity to be entertaining on top of it. But in terms of just, if I could do sports talk, I wouldn't have to immerse myself in the horror of reality. I would just be constantly in this play mode because that's what sports are, right? It's play and distraction. Although increasingly it's true, sports has ended up in the news. But it's not like you even have to go there if you don't want to. Wow, man. And of course, that's a man's job. That's a guy's job. There are very few women who've broken into that rarefied territory, and it's not like it's rarefied because only men can do it. It's just that it's their turf, and there are certain jobs that remain extraordinarily resistant to integration, whether that's racial or in the world of sports. My God, women need not apply, generally speaking. Anyone who's not heterosexual need not apply, generally speaking. Pretty much it's white heterosexual Maleville. And that's the way they like it. Sure. Okay, so I, however, have been tasked with having to talk about the news. And, for instance, you take the front page of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette today, and I am thrilled to see that there is nothing on the front page about the election. Nothing. There's nothing on this front page about the fact that we're in this horrific election, which is in itself delightful. But so I looked at, okay, so what's here and why aren't we talking about this? And then I look at it and it's all a bunch of, it's so, it's about, of course, the opioid scandal, the fact that doctors in America and your well-meaning pharmacist have probably killed more Americans than, definitely than any serial killer you'd like to come up with. Ted Bundy, he's nothing, nobody compared to your MD and your happy pharmacist. I mean, they just were handing this crap out. They still are. All right, so there's that. I don't want to talk about that. And then there's the Plum School District. Good God in heaven. So many people move out there to the burbs because the school districts are clearly so much better than, the city schools. Because, city schools have all those, unruly people, in them. So we don't want our kids having to deal with that. So you move out to a suburb, and here you get the Plum schools. Jesus, Plum, there it is, yeah, real Plum there. Unfriggin' believable. Talk about a white male heterosexual playground. Woo-wee! Okay, so I don't want to talk about that either. Unless you guys do, I don't know. And then this is so horrible. And then there's this piece about how, let's say you're an abused kid, or you see, a child's being abused. So the government of Pennsylvania has a hotline that you're supposed to call, the child line. And do you know, tens of thousands of people have called that, looking for help or to report something. And an audit by, this guy is so damn busy, Auditor General Eugene D. Pasquale. My God, this guy is auditing everything and telling us things we need to know, but they're generally sorry stories. This one is too. So it says here, people, thousands, tens of thousands of people calling to report an abused child, or their suspicions of an abused child, or perhaps even an abused child calling, looking desperately for help. In the last 2 years or year and a half, 42,000 of those callers were either put on hold for so long that they gave up, or the calls were dropped, or they were either hung up or were disconnected. 42,000. It's like having a 911. It's like you're calling 911 because 911 is there, and it's not. There are so many 911 systems that do not work. Can you imagine? You think it's like when your mom, when you were a little kid, and if you're ever lost or having a problem, you ask the friendly police officer for help. And you believe that with all your heart. It's sort of like the way you feel about 911. So if I was in a place and someone's having a heart attack next to me, I know I can help. I can call 911. But what if and the assumption is they'll be there immediately. And in all kinds of locales, states, cities, those 911 systems don't work. There might be one beleaguered human being who's supposed to be. I'm not kidding. They're not funded. So you can call. I think we have a pretty good system here. But these things that, you believe because you need to believe them. They give you comfort. They only work if government works. They only work if government properly funds, staffs, and trains the staff in them, right? But we live in this country now in which a certain party doesn't believe in government anymore, believes in starving the beast, which means not funding. And so you have 911 systems that don't work. We also have a population that doesn't want to pay any taxes anymore. So if they don't, which means, okay, no one's going to fix your roads. No one's going to be able to fix your bridges. The TSA, another case in point, you want security? Well, you got to pay for it. You can argue that it's not well done, but we rely on government. We expect government to be there for us. And then on the other hand, we want to destroy it. We don't want to pay to staff or fund it. It drives me crazy. So there's that story. And then there's the fact that Bill Cosby has finally been held for trial. Now, and I'm totally, I'm done with that story. I'm so done. I mean, I've convicted him a million times. So have you, many of you. Who needs a trial, huh? I don't want to, And if they keep it up much longer and he gets much older and more frail, and now we're told he's blind, I don't want to get to the point where Bleeding Heart Me starts feeling sorry for him. I don't. So let's just dispatch with this pretty quickly, okay? And then the other story is this, my friend Bruce Krause, the president of City Council, who's introduced this legislation that would essentially ban circuses from the city. And there was a hearing about it yesterday, and man, these terrifying clowns were there on behalf of the Shriner Circus, and people from Ringling Brothers were there. There were a lot of unhappy people, and there were a lot of, PETA-type folk, too. So, and you know what? I have to tell you, since I heard this, when I first heard that Bruce Krause had introduced this, I sort of thought to myself, isn't there something a little more bread and buttery that you guys could be paying attention to? I really did think that. And I'm a serious animal lover. But I really did think that. I think the regulations that govern these, especially these major circuses that do comply, are pretty good by now. I'm not sure. But I just think I'd like the Pittsburgh City Council to deal with, the 911 system and the roads and stuff like that. And so I just didn't. I don't care. These things seem a little bit like distractions. It's like eating your dessert before you had your meal. It's like these are things, it'd be really nice to care about the care of a lion or an elephant while they're in Pittsburgh for the day. But that just seems to be something that is not as important, and not as impactful as so many other things. The blight in our neighborhoods. There's so much that the council could be doing, if you ask me. So, anyway, that's the front page of the Post-Gazette, and I am happy to say that while the letter T and the letter R and the letter U and M and P are probably on that page somewhere, they are never put together in that order, TRUMP, which is in itself a sign from God. I don't know. We have a call. Hello, caller.
Hey, Lynn.
Hey.
Hey, you talk about taxes. You know what I say? Let the people that benefit the most from for the roads and all the things in this country, the rich, let them pay for it all. That's my solution to all.
Well, don't you think we all should have a
No.
a stake?
I look at myself. I pay enough local taxes. You do too. Everybody does. But when it comes to these Walmarts where they build roads and stuff, and their trucks come and they abuse the roads, and they're falling apart, and then we got to pay for them. I don't agree with that.
Yeah, but where would you be without those roads? I mean,
but I'm just saying, the people that benefit the most should pay the most on the taxes.
That I agree. Those who benefit the most or who have the most to give can, in fact, should pay more. But I don't think that all of us should be left off the hook, because I think we all need to feel like we have some stake, like there's ownership or something. That we've lost that sense. That like
it's
these
killing the
public works. That's us. That's us.
Right.
You know? So, I'm sure you wouldn't mind throwing in a penny or two just to...
Well, that may be true, but I don't know. I just think it's like you take school taxes. I mean, after you get a certain age, you shouldn't even have to pay those.
Why?
Your kids are raised in that. I mean, I don't understand
Because again, you're not paying... You're paying for something beyond yourself.
But it's killing the average person. It's
Stop and think. If you don't,
losing their homes and all that over it.
Here's a reason to care about whether you have children or not, or whether your children are grown, why you should still contribute to the education of all children. Because let's say you get old, you end up in a nursing home, right?
Yeah.
Who's going to take care of you, huh? There's going to be
that may be so,
young people who you want them to be educated. You want them to. I mean, I don't.
We got enough educated people in this country. That's another thing with the country. We're pushed education, but we don't have the jobs. You can send. My neighbor's a college professor. He says all the time. He said this education stuff, and he was a math teacher. He said it's a bunch of bullshit. He said you can only have so many people employed with educations, and then the rest of them are just have all these loans, and they're working at Walmarts, and that's what we've become. Overeducated. We have more workers than we have jobs, and that's the problem we have.
Well, we have it's sad. I mean, we have there's two countries here. There are people who have money, and I'm not even saying just the 1%. People who are comfortable in this country,
right,
whose children are well educated and are competitive and who are going to go places. And I don't know what percentage that is. I know a lot of these people, and these kids are wonderful and blah, blah, blah. They're going to make it. But then that is certainly not a majority. Then there's this huge bunch of America where they're struggling and they're not doing well.
Right.
And there are children that are not being educated and don't have much of a chance. They haven't had all of the incredible sort of privileges that children of the upper middle class and beyond get.
That brings me to Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Now, if somebody gave you $10 million or gave me $10 million, don't you think we could make some money on it? I mean, and he said it's only $1 million, but it's $10 million. He lied about that. That's proven. I read different articles about it, and he's lying about the $1 million. It's $10 million. So give somebody $10 million with his dad's, where he's already established, and his dad has contacts. So there you go. Boom, he's turned into like an empire. Give us that. We'd probably be doing the same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's easy like that. Just like the jobs where people go for some schooling, they get out, their mom and dad or this or that on the board, they get right in.
That's right.
That's how our country's operated.
Well,
always
it does.
Has been. I understand that. But
that
that's
is
how
right.
It is.
But that is. So what happens is increasingly a relatively small group connected. I know these. I came from such a family. I would
well,
think.
That's the way I come from. Poor. I still basically am poor if you consider what I'm making at.
But if you're born poor and your parents don't know the right people and don't have the resources and can't give you the enrichment experiences that it is so not a level playing field.
No.
It is conceivable, but what
and you don't want to look like you're belly aching, but
no, but you know what freaks me out? Stop and think. Every time I look at children and let's say a bunch of poor children, do you know one of those 5 of those kids could be the next, brilliant scientists, but they'll never have a chance. The assumption in this country that if you're poor, you must not have much upstairs is such unbelievable, dangerous, and it's hurt us, bullshit. Right. All of the human capital that we just waste and turn our backs on because, well, they're not the right people and they aren't our people. And we have this inbred group that just keeps moving up and acquiring more and more wealth. And through their interlocking marriages and friendships and networks, and, yippee for them and lucky them. But my God, these are the people generally who, were born on third base and, think they hit the triple.
That's how it is.
I know.
And if I was telling a kid to do something nowadays, I'd say get into the entertainment business because that's where the money's at.
Well, I would say 2 things. Get into entertainment, but that's hard in a way. Get into entertainment.
It's hard, but it's worth a shot.
Here's another thing.
Get in it.
Get in a trade.
Well, I'm in the trade, so
get in a trade because there's work.
Yeah, there's work.
That work can't be. I don't know what.
There's a lot of competition, believe me.
I know.
I've done a lot of that kind of work, and it's tough, especially in the area I live in. We got everybody and his brother with pickup trucks and trailers and businesses. It's funny as hell.
Ha.
Yeah, I mean you have to compete, but. You're talking about the school taxes. I fine with school taxes. I mean, let's take the sales tax and raise it or something. But don't put it on the backs of somebody that's already paid for their house, and then they lose it over taxes.
Yeah.
When they only paid $5,000 from the house to begin with.
That should not happen.
That's the problem with the whole tax system.
Yeah, and a sales tax, by the way, hits the poor more.
And I was... well, that's true too.
It has to happen through an income tax, and it has to happen through the changing of all the tax loopholes that allow rich people to shelter their money, to put it in trust, to avoid estate taxes, all this shit. Believe me, the system in that regard is totally rigged for the wealthy to retain their wealth and to not pay their fair share. And I'm always reminded of my wonderful grandmother who, when my father would complain about, how much taxes I'm paying. This was like in the 50s and 60s when the tax rate for the upper tax rate was in the 80s. 80% of his income went to the federal government. 80%. Wow. Now, you would say, wow. But did that kill his incentive to work? No, but it made him angry. And his mother-in-law, my grandmother, would listen to him bellyache, and she would say, she would say, rich people's problems.
One thing I can say about the young people today, they don't eat the shit. They, like the stuff that people would put up with years ago, these young people won't. And I give them credit for that. They'll walk away from it. They don't give a shit. And because it's like, we're not going to be your slave. We're not going to do that. We'll go on business for ourselves. That's why you got a lot of entrepreneurs. You got a lot of small business because they say, screw you, I'll go do this on my own. Mm-hmm. I give them credit for that.
Okay. Well, thank you. Always good to hear from you.
Okay, thank you.
All righty.
Bye.
Bye. How about some good news? It's a good time to be a cephalopod or a cephalopod or however the hell you pronounce it. You know what they are? They don't have no bones, I'll tell you that right now. A cephalopod is, to my eye, pretty revolting looking, but fascinating looking. And that is a group that includes squids, octopi, and cuttlefish. And they live, obviously, in the water. And we are told that all of those animals that live in our seas and our rivers and our lakes are under such horror distress because of us. Yay, us. We bring nothing but horror to the beings that populate this earth with us. So our actions have resulted in, I guess, one of the biggest die-offs of whole species that we've seen in millennia. And that's going on. And every time you read an article about it, your heart just sinks. I mean, just sinks. But guess what? The cephalopods are thriving. Cephalopods are growing. There are more squid, more octopus, more cuttlefish than there have ever been. And so here is one organism that loves the crap we've done to the world. They love these warming oceans. And because we're overfishing also, we've taken out a lot of, I guess, the predators that normally would snack on cephalopods, especially the cuttlefish. So they say it doesn't matter whether it's in Australia, off the coast of Australia, the United States, Africa, everywhere you look, they're thriving. They're growing. The increases were across the board. And so even as we decimate tuna, mackerel, sharks, blah, 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 most fish populations have been cut easily in half in the last 30 years. Easily. Some of them decimated. And as one guy put it, it's the unraveling of the fabric of an ecosystem that sustains life on Earth. Yeah, try telling that to the humans. What do you mean unraveling life on Earth? What do you mean? What does some friggin' fish have to do with my life? Warming oceans while killing off whole bunches of fish apparently are just, I mean, it's like, woo-wee. They are thrilled, the cephalopods, whatever they are. And so that's some good news. Also, a much beleaguered insect that is also necessary for the ecosystem that sustains life on Earth would be the honeybee. Correct? And as you know, honeybees are under extreme stress. Colonies dying off, blah, 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 blah. And the major culprit or suspect is, of course, that is right, raise your hands, it's us. It's us. So, we have a call. Hello.
Hello, Lynn?
Yes?
Hey, Lynn, it's Mike the monkey.
Oh, okay.
Lynn, you haven't talked about John Quigley's resignation.
Yeah. Well, go ahead, talk about it.
What had happened was he was a very, very strong advocate for the environment.
That is correct, and he was head of the Department of Natural Resources, or no, is something like that.
Yeah. He was a very key environmentalist, been around for many years.
And he resigned abruptly just a week or so ago or a few days ago, because apparently of a profanity-laced email that
he got so fed up with the system. He was angry with the environmentalists for not pressing.
That's right.
Against the oil and gas
against
the oil and gas industry.
So here's a so-called I think here's where he went awry, right? He's supposed to be in a sort of neutral kind of position, right. A regulator, and he sends this email to all the environmental activists and just
excoriates them.
Where the hell were you?
Exactly. What the hell are you doing? You're just letting the oil and gas just run us over, and he's like the lone peacemaker trying to get things, and it's trying to start like the head of the dam. The dam's ready to break open, and he's saying, "Please, people, stop." And then he just got so frustrated and said, "That's it. I'm done with you. I'm sick of you environmentalists. You're not doing your job." Of course I hate the oil and gas because I've been trying to fight them for years. I'm just wore down. I'm just hanging on my fingernails, I guess he said in the email, in anger. And it was the truth. He was pissed. He's pissed at everybody.
Yeah, I bet he'd like
taking advantage of
I know.
We're getting railroaded.
I bet he wishes he hadn't sent that.
Well, yeah,
because
but,
it'd be better
I've done
for
stuff like that before. I remember I woke up in the middle of the night, this is years ago, and sent an email to somebody because I was so frustrated.
Right.
And it almost came back to bite me. They almost going to sue me for doing things because I told the truth.
Yeah. But it would have been better if Quigley had
taken
a deep breath. I know it'd be better if he were still in his job. Now he's not.
Now he's not. Now they're just gonna, and they were gonna. The oil and gas industry was gonna try to use it against them. And I guess the wolf talked to him and said, "Hey,
just get out."
You're not. It's now you're." And then you hear, like I said, I was doing the same thing on the front page of the paper. They always talk about the kids, like the liberal redneck talks about. I always think about that. That was a beautiful thing he said. The kids. Meanwhile, the kids are getting abused. They're trying to call for help, and there's nobody answering the phone. Or if they do get a hold of somebody, they hang up on them. I mean, I said, what the?
It's beyond belief.
Instead of worrying about who's going to the bathrooms and that kind of crap, where there's the kids are actually being abused and trying to get help, and they can't get through because probably, I don't know if this is for true, but Republicans have probably cut the budget for the people in that area who need the help.
Right. I'm as I said, they're starving government because we
don't want to. And the last caller to say that you shouldn't pay school taxes and because you don't have any kids in school, that's the most craziest, ignorant, rudest thing I've ever heard. These people that talk like this, they pretend they're populist. They're not populist. You can't make all the rich pay either. That's a goddamn wrong approach to things. We all are going to share in this environment. We all have to share. We all need to use the roads. Not only the rich, not the poor. Everybody uses the goddamn roads, the goddamn rivers. The locks and dams are breaking down. We're not spending money for the locks and dams. So, like they said, if the roads get blocked off, you just go around and detour. If the rivers close up, you can't go around that. So therefore, the barges are sitting full of products because they can't move them down a river because the locks and dams are 70 years old, 100 years old, and haven't been replaced.
Now, I want you...
Money for that. We don't have money for locks and dams. We don't have money for roads and bridges. We have money for nonsense and bullshit.
I want you to take a deep breath.
I can't take it no more. On the good note, I ordered my worms this morning from Uncle Jim's Worm Farm.
Good.
So as soon as when that will come next week, and I'll be able to throw my scraps to the worms. And again, back to nature. We got to get back to nature, and if it's not ruined,
okay. Go deal with your worms because that's a positive thing. And
I know.
And
so
your
I just
blood
want to leave
pressure
on a positive note because I'm getting my blood pressure
I
way
know.
up again.
I can hear it.
But, I can't take it. Like I said, read the front page of the paper. Luckily, they didn't mention the T word, like you said, but everything else is on fire. Okay? And we're just playing around, worrying about rabbit shit, and Rome's burning, and we're worried about the animals coming in there. And don't bring the animals in the zoo because they're... And meanwhile, I don't think the circus people are going to abuse the animals. I don't believe so. I think they have... I don't. Maybe they do. Maybe it happens. But I think the circus people understand they're all part of the team. They kind of coexist together. They're not trying to abuse the animals. They're trying to show people, I think, the positive things of animals and what they can do. And
all right. Okay.
I don't think that they're trying to hurt the animals or abuse them.
Go tend
maybe, I don't know.
Your worms.
It's complex, but that's something that's not that worthy. Spend the time worrying about that.
Worms.
We spend more time worried about animals than people. It's
tend your worms.
All right. I'm done.
Goodbye.
Thanks, Lynn.
Goodbye. So, bees, I was saying. Bees. So there's this interesting thing about this guy who kept bees in the French countryside for years and years. And then he moves to Paris, and he keeps bees in the middle of the city. He's one of about 700 hives that are kept in the city of Paris on rooftops and around. And you know what he finds out? Parisian bees, the bees that live in the city, they be happier bees. And they make twice as much honey. Yeah, twice as much honey as their country cousins. And it tastes better. And here's what he thinks. He thinks it's because in the city there's a better mix of trees, flowers, and other plants, whereas in the country you have farms that have just one crop, and there's pesticides on it. Do we have a call? Hello.
Hey, Lynn, Jonathan Greensburg here. Good Wednesday morning to you. Hey, this is going to be a rare non-political call, although I guess tangentially relate, since we have one party in the United States that just refuses on principle to recognize global warming. But you're talking about how this is a banner era for cephalopods because of the warming and acidification of the oceans.
Right.
It dovetails into articles I've read about a growing danger to swimmers and divers on the Pacific coast, which is the Humboldt squid. Humboldts are thriving. Humboldts are a breed of squid that grow to the size of large dogs.
Mm-hmm. What are they
attacking? Grow up to 5 feet long.
They don't attack swimmers, do they?
They sure do. Swimmers and divers. Ugh. Because guess what? They don't like humans venturing to what is now their territory.
I don't blame them.
And Humboldts, when they're in a feeding frenzy or in a mating frenzy, get real aggressive. And multiple Humboldts will come up and batter humans and take bites out of them with their razor-sharp beaks. And you're unlikely to die unless, maybe you're a small child or an elderly person. But you're sure going to have a hurting on you.
Kill the squids! So instead of Jaws, Spielberg will make a movie. Squid tentacles. I don't know. Gosh, I didn't know. I thought these cephalopods were really...
Most are, but
nice.
Humboldts do not
squids.
Like humans venturing into.
I don't blame them.
There.
Yeah.
Remember, humans might be the alphas on land.
Mm-hmm.
You go into the water, you're just another part of the food chain.
Well, I like that. I think we should be reminded that we're just part of the food chain.
I'll be come clean with you about something. I have always had this just sort of irrational, kind of deep-seated fear. Whenever I'm near a very large body of water, especially if it's sort of dark out, overcast, and you can't see anything that's down there, I'm thinking, I don't know, there's just this, primitive part of me that wants to back away, thinking anything at all can come up out of there.
Well, that's true. Time. It's true, and it's a world we don't know, and it's a world we can't live in. And of course, it's frightening. And it's most of the world, isn't it?
Yeah, 3/4 of the world.
Yeah, right. So, we think we're so high and mighty, right? You're just understandably humbled and a bit frightened, which I think is a wise reaction, to this huge expanse under which lurks an entire world that we don't know.
I'm glad we're not living in primeval times where you see there are fossils of these monsters like Megalodon, which was essentially a great white squid, a great white shark, but blown up to the size of a sperm whale.
Jesus. Yeah.
And let's remember, it had to find other big creatures to feed on.
And there were, but that was the time of big creatures. Unbelievable. Yeah. Well, thank you for that.
The one consolation is supposedly those types of monstrosities are relatively short-lived as a species. Meaning tens or hundreds of thousands of years, because they're so effective at killing everything else that they burn themselves out. They burn out their food supply.
Wow. Sort of like us.
Perhaps, yeah.
Yeah, sort of like us. Oh, man. Hey, thanks for the call, and thanks for, now I can add Humboldt squid to my list of reasons why no no, thank you. I don't think I will go swimming.
Yeah, I'm not
right.
going deep sea diving.
Right,
No,
okay. Thank you. Bye, John. All right. So back to the Paris bees. So that makes perfect sense. So the bees in the country are living where the land is farmed. And the way you farm is there's acres and acres and acres of a certain crop. So there's not the kind of variety that they get in a park in the city. And also, they're not getting the just huge numbers of pesticides, I guess. And the bees in the city, and I'm sure that would probably be true here too, but bees in the city live longer, make more honey, and make better tasting honey. Man, they got beehives on the roof of the Parliament in Paris. They got even the French commies. The French Communist Party has a beehive on its roof, which some Twitter user noted means that the Communist Party is now exploiting workers. You get it? Celine just spent some time with bees in our city, right? So get on mic for a second and tell us. Celine and her journalistic capacity. So you didn't go to hives in the city, did you?
No, I did.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah. Randall Hall owns Bee Boy Honey, which is, insofar as I know, the only Pittsburgh urban honey producer.
That's a commercial producer. Because
he
I've read
for
about how
restaurants.
like the Duquesne Club has a hive on top of the building I'm pointing at right over there, but I guess that's just for their own personal use.
I mean, they may sell, but he sells on, I would say, like a somewhat larger scale, although he subscribes to the idea of what he calls soft beekeeping, which means that he tries to interfere with them as little as possible. So he's not feeding them sugar supplements. He's not trying to manipulate production in any extreme way.
So if a bee is in the city here, they got I'm seeing nothing but concrete as I look out the window. So do those bees, they got to fly pretty far to get to like over here, this little park we have here. Where are they getting there?
Well, Pittsburgh has actually one of the highest highest percentages of forest cover.
I know.
As far as the city goes.
But not in the city, so I wonder how far a bee's willing to go.
So the hives we visited were
not
in
downtown.
Shady Side and 9 Mile Run.
Okay,
and then he has some in Polish Hill and Shady Side. So lots of people have gardens, and there's plenty of green space. Good. So, yeah, it was actually really fascinating, and you can hear more about that in June when I release that episode. You can hear him talk all about beekeeping.
So this will be on the podcast.
This will actually be on a separated podcast for food that we will be launching in June.
Okay. That's Pittsburgh City Paper, ladies and gentlemen. There's more going on than you can even imagine. Thank you, Celine. Incredible. All right. So I was talking about, a certain party. Their whole thing is you starve the beast, the beast being the government. And the result of that is the TSA lines, the infrastructure crumbling, no one picking up the phone at 911, and we could go on and on and on. And I have a little quote here from Norm Ornstein, and he says this: "There are very legitimate arguments about the appropriate role and scope of the federal government, but few, except nihilists and the most extreme libertarians, would argue that protecting public safety in the face of catastrophe or epidemic should be off the government's books or sharply constrained in scope. And yet, right now, there are 3 such examples. the horrible Flint water debacle, a man-made disaster, the Zika crisis, a classic disease epidemic, and the opioid crisis. All are crying out for a sharp and focused response from the federal government. And Congress's response? Go on recess. Go on recess without dealing with them. It may be, says Ornstein, no exaggeration to call the current Congress the worst this country has ever endured. And speaking of that, I guess they're back because the House Judiciary Committee had a hearing yesterday, which was one of these show trials they put on. They're always big on show trials. It's like, they took that from the commies. You call in someone who you want to take apart and humiliate in the public eye. It's what they did to Hillary Clinton with the Benghazi thing for 12 hours straight. And she more than held her own. Now, the House Judiciary Committee, which only puts on show trials, is now gone after the IRS commissioner. And by the way, this, of course, has to do with that. Remember, this seems a long time ago now. Remember when they said the IRS was targeting Republican and conservative groups for audits and all this kind of stuff? And many investigations found that, in fact, there appeared to have been something like that, but they were also targeting liberal groups, or it appeared to be just human. It was not whatever. But the Republicans, of course, they don't want to hear facts. They are now saying that this IRS chief lied under oath, and they're threatening him with impeachment. Apparently, impeaching someone as high up as the IRS commissioner is unprecedented. But, this is the Republican-controlled by lunatics, House of Representatives. And even if they were to impeach the IRS commissioner, they would impeach him, but then he would go on trial in the Senate of the United States, right? Well, the head of the Senate Finance Committee has made clear, that's Orrin Hatch, has made clear that the Senate simply would not impeach him. They would not convict him. So this is what Republicans do with government. They do show trials. They pass legislation. I'm looking now at the Republican legislatures around the country that they know are unconstitutional. They're always actively working to make a point as opposed to do their jobs. And so this is all wasted time, energy, and resources that is meant for spectacle and political points when there's so much real work for them to be doing. Case in point. So the drive to impeach this guy, who, by the way, was not head when this whole thing happened that got the Republicans all pissed off anyway. The drive to impeach him is running parallel to the Republican investigation, of course, in Benghazi, which has been going on now for how long? 5,000 years? Libya. There's another one. And the House committees are also continuing to investigate Planned Parenthood when, as we know, a court in Texas, for God's sakes, looking into this, a grand jury, said, hey, the only people who've committed any crimes here are the guys who put out those totally false videos about Planned Parenthood. No investigation at the state level, federal level, or anything has found any illegal activity by Planned Parenthood. And yet our Congress, Republican, is spending its time on that witch hunt. They will not let it go. Unprecedented, says a scholar. Michael Gerhardt, University of North Carolina School of Law, expert on federal impeachment, says an official below the presidential cabinet level has never been impeached. This is unprecedented. Yeah, so is where we are politically because of these friggin' Republicans. Go ahead. Hello. Hello. Hello, hello. Goodbye. Milton has said, my Tentacles, the movie idea, was great. Unfortunately, someone beat you to it. You're kidding. Tentacles was a follow-up to the popularity of Jaws. Oh my God. But they spelled it wrong. It says tentacules. And here are some, oh, he's got the movie poster. And some of the stars are, well, was there a scary movie, disaster movie that Shelley Winters was not in? So it's Shelley Winters, John Huston, Henry Fonda, Tentacules. It's about this huge cephalopod that takes down an entire cruise liner, apparently. Oh, my God. Who knew? So, yeah, fine minds think alike. So, my sister Susan yesterday told us about Ken Starr, the special prosecutor, who brought Monica Lewinsky's semen-stained dress into our public consciousness. And it is a dress that is apparently going to be resurrected again by Donald Trump. And the New York Times did a piece today on what Susan was telling us. I suspect she maybe read this piece online, and then it shows up in the... By the way, you know, you find that out. If you're reading this stuff, you're getting things as much as a day late because everything online is there first. So, Ken Starr, turns out, now president of Baylor University, was in some panel discussion. And my God, the things he said. My God, here is a guy who truly has regrets. But there's no apology coming from him, which I find telling. So here's what he says. As Susan said, he calls his tenure as special prosecutor, get this. He actually, this is a quote from him, the unpleasantness, as I used to call it, the recent unpleasantness. He now has nothing but praise for Bill Clinton. This is the guy who got him impeached. He has nothing but praise. And if you think about what Ken Starr and that whole investigation did to America, you look at the anger and the ugliness and the partisanship now. Do you not think that that Republican effort to unseat a Democratic president because he stooped a young woman, do you not think that that was exactly what I'm talking about. Republicans don't govern. They look for scandals to take for political purposes. That's what they do with their power. Hold show trials. Well, Starr was put in charge of this. And man, he did not disappoint. It says here that the remarks he made at this panel discussion seemed to absolve Mr. Clinton, if not exonerate him. Here's Ken Starr speaking today. Quote, "There are certain tragic dimensions which we all lament." He's talking about the crap he did. Then he talks about Bill Clinton finding redemption. Well, excuse me, how about you finding redemption, Mr. Starr? And then he compares him to President Carter. He says President Carter set a very high standard. He's talking about after leaving office, which President Clinton clearly continues to follow. He then went on to call Clinton the most gifted politician of the baby boom generation. His genuine empathy for human beings is absolutely clear. It is powerful. It is palpable that he genuinely cares. That I feel your pain is absolutely genuine. And you know what some of the guys who worked with Starr said after 9/11? They said if they hadn't been distracting the Clinton White House, think of all the time that went from where the President Clinton was supposed to be doing what a president does, taking care of business, and instead they forced him to do what they do, which is anything but what you're supposed to be doing. They forced him to be dealing with his very survival as the president. And so he was dealing with this legal stuff. He was dealing with all the stuff that created and how it tied up Washington, D.C., and nothing got done. And what Starr's colleagues, many have said, is that there was much regret that what they had forced the Clinton administration to do, which was spend so much time fighting the legal battles, it kept them from addressing a growing threat, which led to 9/11. Now, I don't know if that's true, but it's, if they think it, geez, if only we hadn't been, he hadn't been trying to deal with the semen on Monica Lewinsky's blue dress, maybe there would have been a little more time and energy spent with this growing threat from Osama bin Laden. They were vaguely aware, but not terribly, and of course, yes, and Ken Starr calls this the recent unpleasantness. Ken Starr's also freaked out by Donald Trump. He didn't refer specifically to him, but he said this. He's very concerned about the transnational emergence of radical populism, of deep anger, a sense of dislocation. And he was like mourning the coarsening and polarization of our politics when he had so much to do with it. And yet he does not say in any way, shape, or form that he feels any responsibility for creating the partisanship that we now see playing out in this extraordinary, frightening possibility of a Trump presidency. Here's Ken Starr. the utter decline and erosion of civility and discourse has, I think, very troubling implications. Hey, Ken, baby, it was you who caused America to talk about the president's semen. It was you. You did not have to go there. It was you. When we could have been dealing with, yes, national security, a growing threat from Islamic radicalism, and you instead had America pruriently going through the president and this intern's underwear. And you lament the erosion of civility. Wow. All right. That'd be it for me. We got guests tomorrow. It's fascinating stuff, I think. You'll want to... These are people who are trying to train all of us how to fight back in a constructive way. How to get people to come around to our point of view, not lecturing them, not screaming at them, learning how to listen again. And if we're ever going to heal, this is the kind of stuff we need to learn, I think. So we'll get a lesson or two tomorrow. Okay? Thank you. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.